With Lord Finesse, KG, Dr. Dre, Kanye, all these different people that you work with, even Lauryn Hill, even though that's a different type of relationship professionally. Mm-hmm. The reality is all these people at the time you're around them or getting to work with them are like icons of the game. So what is it about you that you think has consistently enabled you to be able to immerse yourself with this A caliber talent while they're thriving to welcome you as a outsider to them, but then become an insider?
I mean, first and foremost, you have to have, as much as all of those people are good people and this and that, you got to have some stuff with you. You know what I mean? You can't, I've always sort of based my career around this sort of statement, just press play, because I feel like so many people have disclaimers. Oh, this mix isn't good, or, blah, 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 I wanted to fix this, or it's not done, this and that. I've always just wanted to be able to press play and, and let that speak for itself. So first and foremost, it's that. It's definitely like, then I think you get the human connection second, because when you're first meeting these people, and in some cases it may be the human connection first, because I met Dre at his Christmas party, and so I think there was enough of a human connection for him to at least invite me to hear my stuff. I met Dre. Fortunately, I had some stats by then. I wasn't just a brand new kid. That helped. I think when you have a Grammy for Album of the Year, that helps. You at least get in the door, right? You still got to press play. That never changes. And I think temperament. I've always had a good rapport working with artists, a good temperament. When it goes back to the Quincy Jones thing, never getting too high, never getting too low. I've never been too what's the word? I've never been too aware of celebrity. These people are celebrities, but it's never been, I still see them as people and humans first. You know what I mean? So it's always been I've always, to this day in general, like I would say pretty much all the relationships that I've had in this industry, I pretty much still have, just for that reason. I mean, obviously, people go through things. You have your ups and downs, you have your roller coasters and some things, but at the end of the day, I for the most part, I'm still tight with everybody.
Well, that's impressive, especially
in this industry.
Yes, especially in this industry. So, with all of that, with Teddy Riley, if I understand correctly, he was the first one to really give you a quote unquote job or a contract or stuff. What in retrospect, why did that happen when it happened?
Same thing, everything of that time frame in terms of what was going on, because he actually heard my tracks out of a friend's car. You know what I mean? And that's how I wasn't like formally introduced to him, like, like me, where someone was like, hey, this is Shay, makes music, that it was literally, he had heard some tracks and he was like, what's that? And my boy was like, oh, that's one of my boys. And so then he invited me down. But I credit Teddy for the craft of, and I think this has really aided me well in my career. Teddy taught me the difference between a beat and a song. You know what I mean? That was in the nature of the day where, you loop bass production and you'd play a loop, 2-bar, 4-bar loop or whatever, and you might bang your head for 3 minutes just in this one loop, and you'd love it. You'd be like, oh, you'd think it was the best thing. And Teddy'd be like, okay, what's that? The intro? You know what I mean? So it was great. Like he was the person. I spent about a year with Teddy, and he's the one who really just drilled down. And it's funny because he credited some people. I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but some of this, like I think one of the Silvers, he had a relationship with. He credits the people in terms of giving him that information and helping him construct, in terms of arrangements and things of that nature. So I really credit Teddy for teaching me the art of a song. And that really helped me moving forward. So when I got in the Wyclef world, and there was a certain amount of freedom working with Clef, because Clef was also a musician, and he came from the church, but he came from the Caribbean church, which is a little different, and it had all these different influences and different rhythms. Wyclef was so open minded as well too. But I'm coming from Teddy world and getting the tutelage from KG, and so the Fuji album, it's like I really understood the Fuji album before. So I think it just naturally just worked. Me and Clef working together just was the natural thing. And then I had this knowledge coming from Teddy of a song. So I was a producer and beat maker who really was discovering songwriting and in that level. So that was probably next to KG being my mentor. That was probably the next biggest lesson I had as a early in my career.
Okay.
That made all the difference in my career as well.
Well, I think that ties into to the producing vocal side of things, because I've been in the studio, obviously not as much as you, but I've been in the studio with Dr. Dre when he's recording to see how vocals are produced, and then working with Wyclef or Teddy Riley or KG, like you had said, they work with singers too, so it's a different type of thing than just the actual sonics of the music and the delivery of the rapper. It's a whole different ball game. So
Yeah.
so for you, how do you kind of travel those different worlds of producing the music and producing vocals, whether someone's singing or rapping?
I think I actually probably, I enjoy working with rappers, but I probably really more enjoy working with singers. And I think for me, I'm invested in it. I'm invested in the song, and not only that, like getting amazing vocals out of somebody, like trying to just get, I try not to be too, like, Dre can be abrasive, right? Because he's so meticulous. So he's going to make you do it 50 times because he wants to get it perfect. What I would try to do is get that perfect vibe. Maybe not be the perfect aesthetic take. I mean, in terms of technical take, but it might be the perfect vibe take. And then obviously, if you got a comp here and there and adjust, but meaning I'm looking for that vibe. I'm looking for that feeling. So when I'm working with a singer, I'm really trying to make them as comfortable as possible to give that type of performance. And then in addition to that, you know, do my homework on their voice in terms of when they first get in the studio. It's like what mics, obviously do my mic check test. I don't just put singers on, all right, here's the mic is up there and you get in there and that's the mic for you. We might go through quite a few mics and combinations of pre's and so on and so forth to just really arrive at what's the great combination for this singer that really complements their voice. Because I think you do have to capture, all voices are different. And I think when you get into the technical side of things, something that has a tube in it is going to capture a voice one way. Something that has circuitry and is going to capture a voice another way. So it's like, what's the right tool, to capture this voice? And then it's about making that vocalist comfortable to get the best performance out of them, but also challenging them without being an asshole.
And how did you learn to navigate that?
Working with women, because you could push, but only so much. You start finding that, because I think when you're working with a male vocalist, you tend to be a little bit more, it's two men working it, right? So you tend to be a little bit more, I don't know, maybe less sensitive, like you may be a little more abrasive. But with a woman, you tend to try to be, well, at least this is my personal approach. You try to be a little bit more understanding in terms of, I think I was, and building that rapport. So there is that comfortableness and that trust, because the thing about, especially when you're working with really good singers, a lot of times they know what they want. So it's like, okay, well, you know what you want, but I'm also trying to get out of it what I want to put so it's that compromise of getting the best performance that we both like, and and that the engineer is happy with too, technically, sonically.
Okay.
So it's definitely a learned art to it, but it's one that I think any up and coming producer or songwriter, they just have to spend time and collaborate with a vocalist, and as much as possible, and then also, but be open minded. Don't be so rigid.
Yeah, because from my experience too, in different ways than yours, but it seems like it's a case by case, but also a day by day basis. It's
Yeah,
almost.
you have in this day and age of Pro Tools and this and that, and and you can get the perfect take, right? Because you can have the vocalist do each line by line, and then you can auto tune, or you can tune Melodyne, and you can do all these things, and that's almost becomes too perfect. Because I'm a student of history, and if you think about the way the process was in the '60s, and they had 2 and 3 tracks, or they had to get it, they had to nail it, they had to, you know what I mean. So I love that. I love that. It's taken that picture of it, and it's like, yeah, we have technology, but don't let technology take over. You know, still, let's still get it, let's still make it special.
Yeah. And speaking about all these different things, business of music is also extremely important, and that's something that you've talked about a lot throughout your career and had obviously success and failure with that as well. So when and why did it really first click to you, like, oh, I gotta focus on this more, maybe I should take that A&R job at Warner Brothers, maybe I should try to work at labels and do things on a business side as opposed to a strictly creative?
There's a couple of very definitive things of reason why. It was very intentional. Two things. One was the business of Lauryn Hill's um, album. When the dust settled and the business wasn't right on it, and I reflected on it. Obviously, me and James Poyser, who worked together very closely on the album, we felt away when the business wasn't right, because we're really just we had a really great relationship with Lauryn, and the people that were involved in, at the labels, and her people, if you will, management and such. So to be, at the end of the day, to be stolen from, that's the best way to describe it. To be stolen from is very, your first reaction is hurt, right? Is someone you trusted and you hurt, and then the next emotion is anger. But when I let that settle, when I let that pass, I'm kind of good at just sort of like getting back into my space. When I let that settle, I realized if I had educated myself more on the business side of music, there's no way anyone could have taken anything from me, you know. And so therefore, rather than placing blame on anybody else, even though they did do wrong, I'm not saying they didn't do wrong, but I also blame me almost more than anybody, because I had not properly educated myself as well. So that was one of the catalysts for going inside the label. I wanted to learn the music business inside and out. I wanted to know every aspect of it. I wanted to become an expert at the business of music. That's one. The second thing that happened is my future wife, at the time, had gotten pregnant, and so the music business life was great, but it wasn't, at that point in time. It wasn't the most stablest life in terms of bringing a child into it. So that's why I wanted it. So it made sense to do the producer executive thing at that point.
And then
It was,
how and why do you think you got that opportunity? Because even though, the success that you have had, one, with, if I'm understanding everything and from what I know about the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, you wouldn't have got the credit you deserved,
yeah.
and you hadn't had this other stuff. So how did you get and you're coming from a rap R&B background. It's not like you're
Yeah,
Jimmy
I
Jam and
didn't
Terry
have.
Lewis.
Yeah, no, I didn't have this. I didn't have. I didn't have, like, as they say, sort of a resume, if you will. I mean, I had a resume of production, but I didn't have a resume that said anything about, like, oh, this guy could be a good A&R. You know, I was fortunate, though. I was introduced to David Kahn, who used to be the head of A&R at Columbia, and at the time was A&R Warner Brothers. But what we had in common is David was a producer. So he was the head of A&R at Warner Brothers, but he was a producer, and we had that in common. And then, so I think when he spent time with me, he realized I really had the inclination that to be that, that in terms of what he was looking for his A&R staff, that he realized, I think he was like, man, this guy could be a really good A&R. I think he felt that, and he's the one who gave me the first opportunity I got. And we're still the same thing to this day. We're still close. I call him, he's one of my genius friends. He's also a gearhead like me, and he's one of those guys that's really early on gear and really experiment. Just a great, all around talent himself as a producer, and executive. Done great things and as an executive as well.
Now I want you to listen real close to me. I'm going to ask you some real simple questions, and I want some real simple answers. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yes, I understand.
You said that you couldn't have possibly been at the crime scene at 11:15 because you were in the bookstore buying my audio book and my hardcover book at 11:15 when the crime scene occurred in Soren's book.
The history of gangster rap.
So you couldn't have been at the crime scene because you were buying the books.
Right. At 11:15, I was at the bookstore at 11:15, and when I bought the books and accidentally left them at the store.
So at 11:15, you couldn't have been at the crime scene because you were buying books, right?
At 11:15, when I was leaving, it was some people coming in, and I forgot to grab.
But you don't remember who
what they look
people,
like.
what they look like or nothing, right?
No.
So, at 12:15, you in the bookstore buying my audio book and hardcover book and Soren's book at 12:15. So you couldn't have been at the scene because you were buying the books, right?
Yeah, at 12, exactly, at 12:15 exactly, I was at the bookstore.
Now you see. You know you done fucked up.
Which
No, first you said you were at the bookstore at 11:15, and then you said you was 12:15. You know you done fucked up, man.
He fucked up.
Yeah, he fucked up. He fucked up.
Man, you confusing me, man.
So, you get my book, my audio book, 40 years, and Soren's book, History of Gangster Rap, and if you don't, you know you done fucked up, right?
Man, the more those cops ask me questions, the more I wish I bought them motherfucking books.